Welcome to this podcast for Brighton School of Business and Management students studying for the HND Level 5 courses. The aim of this assignment is to provide you with knowledge and understanding of European law as it relates to the United Kingdom, business and individuals. European law has similar implications for all members of the European community and for countries that trade with the European Union. Section 1. Just as asked, you need to describe the function, purpose and operation of the European Council, European Commission, European Parliament and European Court of Justice. Define and explain the importance of European citizenship, federalism and subsidiarity. Section 2. For bullet point 1, you need to explain and describe the sources of European law, such as treaty provisions, regulations, directives and decisions made by the various institutions, including those that you have mentioned in Section 1. General principles are rules developed by the European Court of Justice, which, whilst not expressly presented in all EU legislation, are accepted as underlying principles. They include, for example, the principles of fundamental human rights, proportionality and legal certainty, and you'll need to explain what these are and the importance of them. In most EU countries, there is some conflict over the issue of supremacy of EU law over domestic legislation. In essence, the issue is of EU law overriding or replacing domestic law. You need to explain why this is the case and give examples of how this causes conflict. Section 3. In EU law, a worker is defined in treaty articles, regulations and directives. You'll need to give this definition and explain the importance of the definition and the implications of it. For bullet point 2, EU legislation contains many provisions relating to equal treatment of European nationals in such areas as rights of entry, right of residence and right to remain. You'll need to describe these provisions and analyse how they work in practice. And on the last bullet point, you'll need to explain how EU legislation attempts to protect worker rights and to what extent member states can derogate these rights, that is, partially ignore or amend them, referring to, for example, the grounds of public policy, public security and public health. Section 4. Here you'll need to describe discriminatory practices carried out by national or local government or by business organisations, such as the imposition of unfair import taxation, racial discrimination against immigrants and workers, restrictions on type of goods and services which compete against those of domestic providers, and explain the reasons for these practices. Following on from bullet point 1, you need to discuss the rationale underpinning the principle and the legislation supporting the free movement of goods and services. Your response should focus on the fact that this is one of the cornerstones of the EU internal market, and that as a single market, it follows that within the outer borders of the EU, there should be free movement of goods and services. However, this can cause conflict in some cases, and you should give examples of this and of how derogation might apply in some cases. As with goods and services, the EU legislation and underlying principles also support the free movement of workers. You will need to discuss how this operates and the conflicts and problems it can generate. You should also refer to recognition of qualifications, right to establish and residence rights of non-workers. Here is a list of websites that you should find useful when preparing this assignment. And if you need any further help or guidance with this assignment, please contact your tutor.